I'm Denise, 35 years old, and a dedicated single mom to my 7-year-old daughter, Lily. After my divorce, my parents, Martha and Frank, became our rock, helping with everything from childcare to emotional support. We were so close. I never thought my own parents would be the ones to hurt us most. Their strict religious beliefs seemed harmless until they clashed with my modern approach to raising Lily, especially regarding her medical condition. Before I share how I had to choose between my parents and my daughter, let me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe for more real stories about family challenges. Growing up, I always had a close relationship with my parents. They were strict but loving, and I knew they wanted the best for me. After graduating with my nursing degree, I worked my way up to become a pediatric nurse at Memorial Hospital. I loved my job and the difference I made in children's lives every day. My life seemed perfect when I married David 8 years ago. Within a year, we welcomed our beautiful daughter Lily into the world. She was everything we dreamed of: bright eyes, curly hair, and a smile that could light up the darkest room. But our joy was tempered when Lily was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition at age 3. It required daily medication and careful monitoring, but with proper treatment, doctors assured us she could live a normal, healthy life. The diagnosis put a strain on our marriage. David couldn't handle the stress of having a child with medical needs. The late-night hospital visits, the medical bills, and the constant worry became too much for him. By the time Lily turned 4, David had moved out, leaving me to manage everything alone. That's when my parents stepped up in ways I never expected. They sold their home in Ohio and bought a small house just 10 minutes from us in Pennsylvania. Mom would watch Lily when I worked long shifts, and Dad would help with house repairs and yard work. They became our safety net. "You focus on providing for Lily, sweetheart," Mom would say. "We've got everything else covered." Every Sunday, we'd gather for family dinner. Dad would grill while Mom and I prepared sides, and Lily would set the table, carefully placing each fork and knife with her little hands. Those moments felt precious, like we were rebuilding something beautiful from the ashes of my failed marriage. "I don't know what I'd do without you both," I told them one evening as we watched Lily play in their backyard. "You've saved us." Mom squeezed my hand. "Family takes care of family. That's what God intended." My parents had always been religious, attending their Methodist church regularly, but it wasn't something they pushed on others. They respected that. After my divorce, I had pulled away from organized religion, finding more comfort in quiet personal reflection than Sunday sermons. The first signs of tension appeared around Lily's 5th birthday. Mom suggested we have her baptized at their church. "She should be brought into God's family properly," Mom said while helping me prepare for Lily's birthday party. "Pastor Williams does beautiful ceremonies." "I'd rather let Lily decide about religion when she's older," I replied, carefully icing cupcakes. "I want her to explore her own path." Mom pursed her lips but didn't push further. Dad changed the subject, asking about Lily's upcoming doctor's appointment instead. As months passed, other small disagreements arose. My parents disapproved of certain TV shows Lily watched, saying they promoted worldly values. They questioned my decision to let Lily wear pants to church instead of dresses. They suggested I was too lenient when Lily had tantrums, whispering about "spare the rod, spoil the child." I brushed these comments off, attributing them to generational differences in parenting styles. They were entitled to their opinions, and overall they respected my boundaries as Lily's mother. Or so I thought. About 6 months before everything fell apart, my parents began attending a new church. Their longtime pastor had retired, and rather than staying with their congregation, they were invited by neighborhood friends to visit the True Light Chapel, led by Pastor James Goodwin. "You should come with us," Dad encouraged after their first visit. "Pastor James speaks with such clarity about modern problems. He really understands what families face today." I attended one service to be supportive. Pastor James was charismatic with a booming voice and confident manner that commanded attention. But something about his sermon unsettled me. He spoke about the poison of modern medicine and how true believers seek healing through faith first. I noticed my parents nodding enthusiastically. Over the following months, my parents became increasingly involved with the True Light Chapel. They attended not just Sunday services, but Wednesday Bible studies, Friday prayer meetings, and Saturday community outreach events. Their house filled with books by Pastor James and DVDs of his sermons. One afternoon, while Lily napped at their house after I picked her up from a doctor's appointment, I noticed a stack of pamphlets on their coffee table. The title made my stomach turn, Divine Healing, Why Medicine Fails, Where Faith Succeeds. I flipped through it, reading passages highlighted in yellow marker. Pharmaceuticals replace faith with chemicals, and parents who truly love their children seek God's healing touch first. I slipped the pamphlet back just as Mom entered with tea. "We're so blessed to have found Pastor James," she said, smiling. "He's opened our eyes to so many truths we were missing." I nodded non-committally, a chill running down my spine that I couldn't quite explain. Looking back, I should have recognized this as the first serious warning sign, but at that moment, I still couldn't imagine how dangerous their new beliefs would become for my precious Lily. The morning after discovering the pamphlets, I called my parents to discuss my concerns. I tried to keep my tone casual as I brought up what I'd found. "Oh, those," Mom said dismissively. "Pastor James provides educational materials for the congregation. There's some fascinating information about natural healing. You should read them with an open mind, Denise." "Mom, Lily's condition requires medication. Her doctors have been clear about that." "Doctors aren't infallible, dear. They're just people who've been indoctrinated by pharmaceutical companies. Pastor James says many conditions can be treated through prayer, proper nutrition, and detoxification." I felt my chest tighten. Lily's medication keeps her alive. It's not up for debate. "No one's debating anything," Dad chimed in from the extension. "We respect that you're her mother. We're just suggesting you consider all options." I ended the call feeling uneasy, but told myself they were just going through a phase with their new church. They would never actually interfere with Lily's treatment. They loved her too much. Over the next few weeks, I noticed subtle changes in their behavior. When I'd pick Lily up from their house, Mom would casually mention articles she'd read about children recovering from autoimmune conditions through detox protocols or prayer healing. "Sarah from church had terrible arthritis," she told me one evening. "Doctors wanted to put her on all sorts of medications. Instead, she did a cleanse and prayed daily. Now she's pain-free." I would nod politely while changing the subject, not wanting to create tension when they were helping us so much with childcare. The first real alarm bell rang when Lily came home from a weekend at my parents' house talking about bad medicine. "Grandma says my pills have toxins," she informed me while I unpacked her overnight bag. "She says God can make me better if I pray hard enough." I froze. "What else did Grandma tell you about your medicine?" Lily shrugged, already distracted by her toys. "That doctors don't always know best. That God knows better." That night, I called my best friend Amanda, a fellow nurse who had been my support system since the divorce. "They're filling her head with dangerous ideas," I told her, pacing my kitchen after Lily went to bed. "She's 7. She doesn't understand the consequences of not taking her medication." "You need to set clear boundaries," Amanda advised. "Tell them medical decisions are off limits for discussion with Lily. Period." The next day, I sat my parents down for a serious conversation. Lily was at school, so we could speak freely. "I appreciate everything you do for us," I began, "but I need to be very clear about something. Lily's medical care is not open for discussion. Please don't tell her that prayer can replace her medication or that her medicine is harmful." Mom looked hurt. "We would never do anything to harm Lily." "Questioning her medication to her directly could harm her if she decides she doesn't want to take it," I explained. She trusts you both completely. We understand, Dad said, though his tone was stiff. We'll be more careful. For a few weeks, things seemed to improve. Then Lily's medication went missing. I always kept her pills in a special container on the kitchen counter. One evening, I went to give her the evening dose, and the container was empty. That's strange, I muttered, trying to remember if I'd moved it. Lily, have you seen your medication? She shook her head, absorbed in her coloring book. I searched the entire house before finding the empty container in the bathroom trash. The pills were gone. I immediately called the pharmacy for an emergency refill, explaining the situation. When I asked my parents about it the next day, they seemed genuinely confused. Maybe you accidentally threw them away while cleaning, Mom suggested. Or could Lily have moved them? I accepted this explanation reluctantly. Accidents happened after all, but a knot of suspicion formed in my stomach. 2 weeks later, my parents brought Pastor James to our Sunday dinner unannounced. He arrived carrying a leather-bound Bible and a bag of what looked like supplements. I hope you don't mind, Mom said brightly. Pastor James wanted to meet Lily. He has experience with natural healing for children. I was furious, but maintained my composure for Lily's sake. Throughout dinner, Pastor James peppered me with questions about Lily's condition and treatment. Have you considered that pharmaceuticals mask symptoms while prayer addresses the root cause? He asked, spooning more potatoes onto his plate. Lily's doctors are excellent, I replied firmly. Her treatment plan is working well. Modern medicine has its place, he conceded with a condescending smile. But as Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine. Combined with the power of prayer, proper nutrition can work miracles. After dinner, while Lily showed my father her school art project in the living room, Pastor James pressed a jar of green powder into my hands. A special blend of herbs and minerals, he explained. It's helped many children in our congregation, completely safe and natural. I returned it immediately. No, thank you. Lily's medical care is supervised by specialists. After they left, I called my parents. Don't ever bring anyone to discuss Lily's health without my permission again, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. And please respect that I make the medical decisions for my daughter. We're just trying to help, Mom replied, her voice thin with disappointment. I know, but this is my boundary. Please respect it. They agreed, but their tone was cold. The following weeks brought more passive-aggressive comments and tense exchanges. When Lily had a minor flare-up of her condition and her doctor increased her dosage, my parents couldn't hide their disapproval. More chemicals, Mom muttered under her breath as I explained the new dosing schedule since they would be watching Lily that weekend. I fixed her with a stern look. This is not up for discussion. She nodded stiffly, and I left for work with a growing sense of dread. Something was shifting in our relationship, and for the first time, I began to wonder if I could trust them completely with Lily's care. The night everything fell apart began like many others. I was halfway through my shift at the hospital when the emergency room filled with victims from a major highway pileup. Every available nurse was called to assist, and I had no choice but to stay for a double shift. I called my parents immediately. Can you keep Lily overnight? There's been a huge accident, and we're short-staffed. Of course, Mom replied without hesitation. Don't worry about a thing. We'll take good care of our granddaughter. I felt a wave of gratitude despite our recent tensions. No matter our disagreements, they had always been reliable when I needed them. Thank you. Her evening medication is already prepared in the labeled container by her lunchbox. She needs to take it with food before bed. The morning dose is in the container marked with a sunrise sticker. Make sure she takes it with breakfast. We know the routine, Denise, Mom said, slightly offended. We've watched her plenty of times. I know. I just worry. Dr. Reynolds adjusted her dosage last week, so it's important she gets the full amount. We'll handle it. Focus on your patients. Throughout my grueling 18-hour shift, I texted to check on Lily. Each time my parents reassured me everything was fine. Dad sent a photo of Lily smiling while playing board games. Mom texted that she'd gone to sleep without any issues. I finally arrived home around 9 the next morning, exhausted, but relieved to have the next day off. My parents' car was in the driveway, and I could hear Lily's voice as I unlocked the front door. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. Lily sat on the couch, her normally rosy face pale and drawn. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her movements seemed sluggish as she looked up. "Mommy," she said, her voice weaker than normal. "I don't feel good." I rushed to her side, placing my hand on her forehead. Her skin burned with fever. "She woke up like this," Mom said from the kitchen doorway. "We gave her some orange juice and toast, but she hasn't eaten much." I noticed the medication containers on the counter, both still full with their tablets. "She didn't take her medicine?" I asked, dread flooding through me. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. "Well," I prompted, feeling Lily's pulse, which was racing. "We prayed over her instead," Dad finally said, standing taller as if preparing for confrontation. "Pastor James has been teaching us about faith healing, and we felt led by the Spirit to try a different approach." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You what?" "Denise, those medications are suppressing her natural healing abilities." Mom explained, her voice taking on a rehearsed quality. "We've been doing research." "Research?" I echoed, fury building inside me. "You mean those pamphlets from your pastor? Those aren't research." "Not just pamphlets," Dad interjected. "We've been consulting with Brother Timothy from church, who overcame cancer through prayer and nutrition." I turned my attention back to Lily, who was now leaning heavily against me, her breathing slightly labored. Medical training kicking in, I checked her lymph nodes, finding them swollen. "How long has she been without her medication?" I demanded, already reaching for my phone to call her doctor. My parents hesitated again. "Tell me," I shouted, startling Lily, who began to cry softly. "We've been reducing her doses for a few weeks," Mom admitted quietly. "Just a little at first, replacing some pills with herbal supplements from Pastor James. When you asked us to watch her last night, we felt it was a sign from God to take the final step of faith." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "A few weeks? You've been tampering with her medication for weeks." "We were weaning her off slowly," Dad defended. "That's safer than stopping cold turkey. And we've been giving her special herbal teas and Brother Timothy's immune-boosting tincture." My hands shook as I dialed Dr. Reynolds' emergency number. "Where is her medication now? I need to give her the proper dose immediately." My parents exchanged another look that sent ice through my veins. "We disposed of it," Dad finally said. "All of it. It was an act of faith, Denise. Sometimes you have to step out boldly for God to work miracles." "You disposed of it," I repeated, my voice barely audible. "What does that mean?" "We flushed it," Mom admitted. "This morning before you got home, we wanted to make a clean break with worldly medicine." Dr. Reynolds answered at that moment, and I quickly explained the situation, my voice breaking with panic and rage. "Bring her in immediately," he instructed. "This could trigger a serious autoimmune response. I'll meet you in the ER." I hung up and glared at my parents. "Get out of my way. I'm taking Lily to the hospital." "No." Mom stepped forward. "Let us try prayer first. Pastor James says—" "I don't give a damn what Pastor James says," I screamed, lifting Lily into my arms. "Your faith healing could kill her. Her medication prevents her immune system from attacking her own body." Lily whimpered against my shoulder, frightened by my outburst. "This is the devil's influence," Dad said grimly, "making you choose medicine over God's healing power." I pushed past them toward the door. The only devils here are the ones who stopped a sick child's medication. Don't be here when we get back. I rushed Lily to the car, buckling her in with shaking hands. As I pulled out of the driveway, I could see my parents standing in the doorway, my mother's hands clasped in prayer. My father's face set in righteous determination. In that moment, I knew our relationship would never be the same again. The 20-minute drive to the hospital was the longest of my life. Lily's condition deteriorated rapidly. Her fever climbed, and she became disoriented, struggling to answer simple questions. By the time we reached the emergency entrance, she could barely keep her eyes open. Dr. Reynolds met us at the door with a team ready. They whisked Lily away for immediate treatment, while a nurse held me back, guiding me to complete paperwork. When I explained what had happened, the nurse's professional demeanor cracked slightly, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Your parents stopped her medication," she repeated. "Deliberately." I nodded, tears finally breaking through as the adrenaline began to ebb. "For weeks, apparently. They've joined some church that believes in faith healing." The next few hours passed in a blur of medical jargon for drips and specialists consulting in hushed tones. I sat by Lily's bedside, holding her tiny hand, as machines beeped around us. Dr. Reynolds didn't sugarcoat the situation. "Abrupt withdrawal from her immunosuppressants has triggered a severe inflammatory response," he explained. "We're working to get it under control, but she'll need to stay in the hospital for monitoring. If we'd caught this even a few hours later, the consequences could have been much more serious." The word he didn't say hung in the air between us. Fatal. Lily spent that night in the pediatric intensive care unit. I refused to leave her side, curling up in the uncomfortable visitor's chair, starting awake every time a machine beeped or a nurse entered to check her vitals. By morning, her fever had finally broken, but she remained weak and confused. The hospital's pediatric social worker, Ms. Jenkins, asked to speak with me privately while Lily slept. "Dr. Reynolds explained the situation with your parents," she said gently when we stepped into the hallway. "I understand they deliberately withheld Lily's medication due to religious beliefs." I nodded, exhaustion making it difficult to form words. "This constitutes medical neglect," she continued. "As mandatory reporters, the hospital staff is obligated to file a report." "A report?" I echoed, my foggy brain struggling to process her words. "With Child Protective Services," she clarified. "Not against you, but regarding your parents' actions. This will help document the incident and could be important if you need to take legal steps to protect Lily in the future." The implications of her words slowly penetrated my exhaustion. Legal steps, protection. These were terms I never imagined would apply to my relationship with my own parents. "I understand," I finally said. "Do whatever is necessary to protect Lily." Around noon, as Lily watched cartoons and picked at a hospital lunch, the last people I wanted to see appeared in the doorway. My parents accompanied by Pastor James and 3 other church members, all carrying Bibles. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, moving to block their entry. "We've come to pray for our granddaughter," Mom announced, attempting to step around me. "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "You've done enough damage." Pastor James stepped forward, his expression grave. "Your daughter needs spiritual healing, not just physical treatment. We're here as warriors of faith." The church members behind him nodded, one woman already raising her hands and whispering prayers. "Get out," I said through clenched teeth. "You're not welcome here." "We have every right to see our granddaughter," Dad insisted, his voice rising. "You can't keep us from her." "Actually, I can," I retorted. "And I will." Pastor James placed a hand on my shoulder, which I immediately shrugged off. "The Bible tells us that the prayer of faith will save the sick," he intoned. "Your lack of faith is blocking God's healing power." Something snapped inside me. Years of nursing training, of watching evidence-based medicine save lives daily, combined with the terror of nearly losing my daughter, erupted in a torrent of fury. "My lack of faith!" I shouted, no longer caring who heard. "Your faith nearly killed my daughter. Your ignorant, dangerous ideas made my parents stop giving a seriously ill child her life-saving medication." Hospital security appeared, drawn by the commotion. Lily began to cry from her bed, the monitors beeping as her heart rate increased. "Please lower your voices," a security guard instructed. "This is a hospital." "These people need to leave," I said, pointing at the group. "They're upsetting my daughter." "We're her grandparents," Mom protested, tears welling in her eyes. "We love her." "If you loved her, you wouldn't have risked her life," I shot back. Security asked everyone to step outside the room. In the hallway, Pastor James attempted to quote scripture about persecution and standing firm in faith, but the security guard cut him off. "Either you leave voluntarily or we'll escort you out," he stated firmly. My parents looked at me with a mixture of hurt and righteous indignation. "This isn't over, Denise," Dad warned. "We're only trying to save Lily's soul as well as her body." "Her body wouldn't need saving if you had given her the medication she depends on," I replied coldly. "Don't come back unless you're ready to accept reality." After they were escorted from the floor, a doctor I hadn't met before approached me. She introduced herself as Dr. Patel, the hospital's chief of pediatrics. "I understand your daughter's condition was compromised by family members withholding medication," she said. "Dr. Reynolds has briefed me. I want you to know we're taking this very seriously." She explained that the hospital would implement special visitor restrictions for Lily's room and document everything thoroughly for potential legal proceedings. "What happened to Lily is not just medically dangerous, it's legally actionable," she said. "Your parents violated basic standards of care that any reasonable adult should understand." Later that afternoon, after Lily had finally fallen into a peaceful sleep, Amanda arrived with a change of clothes for me and toiletries. She held me while I sobbed, the full weight of betrayal finally crashing down. "I trusted them," I whispered, "with the most precious person in my life. How could they do this?" "They've been brainwashed," Amanda said, stroking my hair. "This pastor has filled their heads with dangerous nonsense." "I saw the warning signs," I admitted. "The pamphlets, the comments bringing that pastor to dinner. I should have been more vigilant." "This is not your fault," Amanda insisted. "You're a great mother. You trusted your parents because that's normal. Parents should be trustworthy." As I looked at Lily's small form in the hospital bed, I made a silent promise. Never again would I allow anyone, not even family, to endanger her well-being. The trust between my parents and me was irreparably broken, and I needed to accept that harsh reality. 3 days later, Dr. Reynolds determined Lily was stable enough to go home. Her body had responded well to the treatment, though he warned she might experience lingering fatigue and increased susceptibility to infections for a few weeks while her medication regimen was reestablished. "I've called in prescriptions to your pharmacy," he said, handing me detailed written instructions. "It's crucial she doesn't miss any doses as we work to stabilize her condition again." "She won't," I promised grimly. When we pulled into our driveway, my heart sank. My parents' car was parked out front, and I could see them sitting on the porch swing. They stood as we approached, and I noticed Pastor James sitting in a rocking chair beside them. "Stay in the car, sweetie," I told Lily, unbuckling my seatbelt. "I need to talk to Grandma and Grandpa first." "Are they still mad at me?" she asked in a small voice. "Mad at you? Why would you think that?" "Because I got sick," she whispered. "Grandma said if I had enough faith, I wouldn't need medicine. But I got really sick, so maybe I didn't believe hard enough." White-hot rage surged through me. They had not only endangered her physically, but had burdened her with guilt and confusion. Listen to me, I said, turning to face her fully. Getting sick was not your fault. You have a medical condition that requires medicine, like some people need glasses to see, or insulin for diabetes. Faith is beautiful, but it doesn't replace medication. What happened was Grandma and Grandpa's mistake, not yours. She nodded uncertainly. Stay here and watch your tablet. I'll come get you when it's safe to come inside. I approached the porch, my posture rigid with determination. You need to leave, I stated without preamble. All of you. Denise, please. Mom began stepping toward me. We've been praying about this. We realize we moved too quickly with Lily's healing journey. Healing journey? I repeated incredulously. Is that what you're calling it? Sister Denise? Pastor James interjected smoothly. Your parents have acknowledged they should have prepared Lily's body more gradually for the transition away from pharmaceuticals, but their intentions were pure. They want God's best for their granddaughter. Their pure intentions put my daughter in the ICU, I snapped, and I'm not your sister. The hospital overreacted, Dad claimed. Western medicine always does. They're trained to push drugs, not healing. The hospital saved Lily's life after you nearly killed her. I was shouting now beyond caring about civility. That's the devil talking, Pastor James said sternly. I sense dark forces at work here. My laugh was bitter and short. The only dark force was the one telling my parents to flush life-saving medication down the toilet. Mom stepped forward, her eyes pleading. We've brought Pastor James to help us all find a compromise. Maybe Lily could take reduced medication while we implement a spiritual healing program Brother Timothy has offered to let Lily attend the Children's Healing Retreat at True Light Camp next month. A camp? I was dumbfounded. You think I'd let Lily go to some camp run by people who think medicine is evil? After what you did? It would be good for her spiritual growth, Dad insisted. Pastor James has seen wonderful results with other children. Some have even been completely healed of asthma allergies and other conditions. I want you all off my property right now, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Lily will not be attending any camp. She will not be subject to any more of your spiritual healing. In fact, until you acknowledge the harm you've caused and promise never to interfere with her medical care again, you won't be seeing her at all. You can't keep us from our granddaughter, Mom cried. We have rights. Actually, I can, I countered. And if you try to fight me on this, I should warn you that I've been recording this entire conversation. I pulled my phone from my pocket, showing them the active recording. It was a bluff. I hadn't actually been recording, but they didn't know that. That's illegal, Pastor James sputtered. Actually, Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state for recordings, I replied, thanking my lucky stars for a legal podcast I'd recently listened to. And I've also got recordings of you admitting to disposing of prescription medication, which is a felony, by the way. My parents exchanged alarmed glances. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, emboldened by their reaction. You're going to leave right now. You're not going to contact us unless I reach out first. If you truly love Lily, you'll respect her medical needs and my decisions as her mother. You're making a terrible mistake, Pastor James warned. Without God's intervention, your daughter will remain in bondage to pharmaceuticals. I'll take that chance, I replied coldly. Now get off my property before I call the police and share these recordings with them. For a tense moment, I thought my father might refuse. His face had flushed dark red, and his hands were clenched into fists. But my mother touched his arm gently. Let's go, Frank, she said quietly. We need to pray on this. As they walked to their car, my mother turned back. We love you both, Denise. One day, you'll understand we were trying to help. Love doesn't look like this, I answered, my voice finally breaking. Love doesn't risk a child's life for religious dogma. I watched them drive away, Pastor James's car following close behind. Only when they'd turned the corner did I return to get Lily from the car. As I helped her up the steps to our front door, I realized we were entering a new chapter of our lives, one without the support system I'd relied on since my divorce, but one where Lily would be safe from dangerous ideologies masquerading as love. Inside, I helped Lily settle on the couch with a blanket and her favorite stuffed dolphin. I carefully measured out her medication and watched as she swallowed each pill, fighting back tears, as I thought about how close I'd come to losing her. Are Grandma and Grandpa gone? She asked, looking around the empty house. Yes, sweetie, they had to go home. Will they come back tomorrow? I sat beside her, struggling to find words that would be honest but not frightening. Not tomorrow, no. Grandma and Grandpa need some time to think about some mistakes they made. She nodded solemnly, accepting this explanation with the simple logic of childhood. Like when I broke your flower vase and had to go to my room to think about being more careful. Despite everything, I smiled. Something like that, but grown-up mistakes, much bigger ones. As Lily drifted off to sleep, exhausted from her hospital stay, I made a silent vow. I would rebuild our lives without my parents if necessary. I would create new support systems, find trustworthy childcare, and ensure Lily never again felt responsible for adult failures. Most importantly, I would protect her from anyone who put dogma above her well-being, even if those people were the ones who had raised me. The weeks following Lily's hospitalization were among the most challenging of my life. My parents launched what can only be described as a smear campaign within our extended family and community. They told anyone who would listen that I was medically abusing Lily by forcing harmful chemicals on her instead of seeking God's healing. Most people recognized the absurdity of these claims, but a surprising number, particularly those from their church, believed them. I received concerned phone calls from distant relatives and even a few neighbors questioning my parenting decisions. After blocking my parents' numbers due to their constant texts about saving Lily from modern medicine, I consulted a family law attorney, Catherine Rodriguez. She listened to my story with growing concern, occasionally jotting notes on a yellow legal pad. What they did constitutes medical neglect, she confirmed when I finished. And their continuing attempts to undermine Lily's treatment are deeply troubling. I recommend we file for a temporary restraining order while we pursue more permanent legal protections. A restraining order against my own parents? I repeated numbly. I never imagined it would come to this. Family estrangement is always painful, Catherine acknowledged, but your priority has to be Lily's safety. As we discussed legal options, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but Catherine nodded for me to answer in case it was relevant to our discussion. Denise, it's James, your brother. I nearly dropped the phone in shock. My younger brother James and I had barely spoken in 5 years, not since he'd left home after an explosive argument with our parents over his decision to attend art school instead of the Christian college they'd chosen. James, how did you get my number? Amanda found me on Instagram. She thought I should know what's happening with Mom and Dad. Is Lily okay? She's recovering, I said cautiously. Why are you calling now? He sighed heavily. Because I've been through this with them, Denise. Not the same situation, but the same pattern. When I left for art school, Dad told me I was choosing worldly success over godly purpose. When I came out as gay 2 years later, they said I was possessed and needed deliverance. I didn't know you were gay, I admitted, realizing how much I'd missed of my brother's life during our estrangement. Yeah, well, there's a lot we haven't talked about, he replied, a hint of bitterness in his tone. But that's not why I'm calling. Amanda told me they joined some new church with an extreme pastor. That tracks with what happened before I cut contact. They were becoming more radical, finding religious justification for controlling everyone around them. They nearly killed Lily James, I whispered, stepping away from Catherine for privacy. They stopped her medication because their pastor convinced them faith would cure her. Jesus, he breathed. I'm so sorry, Denise. Listen, I know we've been distant, but I want to help. I still have connections in their community, people who might warn us if they're planning something drastic. By the end of our conversation, I felt a strange mixture of grief and hope. Grief for the parents we had both lost to extremism, but hope that at least my brother and I might rebuild our relationship from the ashes. True to James's prediction, my parents filed for grandparents' rights the following week, claiming I was medically abusing Lily by forcing unnecessary and harmful medications on her. Their petition included statements from Pastor James and several church members attesting to the miracle cures they'd witnessed through faith healing. Catherine was unimpressed. These claims won't stand up in court, she assured me. Pennsylvania grants grandparents' rights only in very specific circumstances, and judges prioritize the child's well-being above all. We have medical documentation of the harm their interference caused. Still preparing for the hearing consumed my emotional energy. I gathered Lily's medical records, documented the incident in excruciating detail, and collected statements from her doctors explaining the critical nature of her medication regimen. Amanda took days off work to help with Lily when my shifts couldn't be rescheduled, and my brother James drove up from Philadelphia to lend support. Meanwhile, Lily's health slowly improved, but the emotional damage became increasingly apparent. She had nightmares about being sick again. She questioned whether God was angry at her for taking medicine. She worried about her grandparents, asking repeatedly when she could see them again. I enrolled her in play therapy with Dr. Winters, a child psychologist who specialized in family trauma. After their third session, Dr. Winters requested to speak with me privately. Lily is struggling to reconcile her love for her grandparents with what happened, she explained. She's confused by the contradictory messages she's received about her health. On one hand, you're telling her the medication keeps her well. On the other, people she loves and trusts told her the medication is harmful and that faith alone would heal her. How do I fix this? I asked desperately. You're already doing the right things, she assured me. Maintaining consistency with her medication, explaining things in age-appropriate terms, and providing therapy. But healing takes time, especially when the wound comes from trusted loved ones. The court date arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. I dressed in my most professional outfit, hands shaking as I fastened the buttons on my blazer. James arrived early to stay with Lily, who was still asleep when I left. "You've got this," he said, hugging me tightly. "The truth is on your side." The family court was smaller than I'd imagined, with wood-paneled walls and uncomfortable benches. I sat beside Catherine, trying not to look at my parents across the aisle. I failed, catching a glimpse of my mother's tear-stained face and my father's rigid posture, Pastor James sitting supportively beside them. Judge Harriet Wilson, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, reviewed the case documents carefully before addressing the court. She listened as my parents' attorney argued that they had a constitutional right to religious freedom and acted out of sincere belief in divine healing. When it was Dr. Reynolds' turn to testify, he didn't mince words. Abrupt withdrawal of this medication could have been fatal, he stated firmly. This wasn't a minor decision like choosing between treatment options. This was the equivalent of removing a diabetic child's insulin because you believe prayer will regulate their blood sugar. My parents' attorney tried to question his bias toward pharmaceutical interventions. But Dr. Reynolds, with 30 years of pediatric experience, remained unflappable. "I've seen children die because parents chose faith healing over proven medical treatment," he countered. "Faith and medicine aren't mutually exclusive. Many of my deeply religious patients pray and take their medication. Judge Wilson's questions were incisive, cutting through the emotional rhetoric to focus on Lily's well-being. When she finally rendered her decision, her voice was firm and clear. The court finds that the petitioners Martha and Frank Thompson demonstrated poor judgment that directly endangered their grandchild's health. While I respect religious freedom, that freedom ends where a child's safety begins. The court denies the petition for grandparents' rights and orders that any visitation must be supervised until the petitioners demonstrate an understanding of and respect for the child's medical needs. My parents' faces fell as the judge continued. Furthermore, any attempt to interfere with the child's established medical treatment will result in the immediate termination of all visitation privileges. Relief flooded through me, my legs weakening so much that Catherine had to steady me as we stood to leave. In the hallway, my parents approached Pastor James, hovering behind them. "We'll be appealing this decision," Dad announced stiffly. "The judge clearly has anti-Christian bias." "This isn't about Christianity," I replied, finding strength in the judge's validation. "Many Christians take medication. This is about Lily's safety, which you compromised." "We won't accept supervised visitation," Mom declared, tears streaming down her face. "It's humiliating and implies we'd harm our own granddaughter." "You did harm her," I reminded them. "That's why we're here." Pastor James stepped forward. "Pride goeth before destruction, Denise. Your lack of faith will have consequences." Catherine intervened before I could respond. "That statement could be construed as a threat," she warned. "I suggest you all leave now before you complicate your legal position further." As they walked away, I realized my parents had made their choice. Their religious convictions and pride were more important to them than having a relationship with Lily under the court's reasonable conditions. The supervised visitation option had been an olive branch I hadn't expected from the judge, and they had rejected it outright. The drive home was oddly peaceful despite the emotional turmoil of the day. The rain had stopped, and weak sunlight filtered through dispersing clouds. Something had settled inside me, a certainty that I had done the right thing no matter how painful. James met me at the door, Lily beside him, proudly displaying a painting they'd created together. "We won," I told him quietly, while Lily ran to put her artwork on the refrigerator. "I never doubted it," he replied, squeezing my shoulder. "Justice sometimes actually works." That evening, as news of the court's decision spread, I discovered the true division in our community. Several families from my parents' church stopped speaking to me entirely. Our longtime neighbors, the Wilsons, awkwardly explained they couldn't take sides, but would appreciate if we didn't mention the situation when we ran into each other. But for every person who pulled away, someone else stepped forward. Amanda organized a meal train among our nursing colleagues. My brother James extended his visit, indefinitely crashing on my couch, while he looked for graphic design work in the area. Dr. Winters connected me with a support group for parents navigating family estrangement, and Lily's school principal, Ms. Ortiz, assured me they would be vigilant about unauthorized adults attempting to contact Lily. That night, after tucking Lily into bed with extra hugs, I sat on my back porch with James watching fireflies blink in the gathering darkness. "Do you think they'll ever change?" I asked quietly. James considered the question, sipping his tea. "Honestly, I don't know. I spent years hoping they would waiting for them to choose their actual children over their religious ideology. But at some point, I had to accept that might never happen and build a life anyway." I nodded, tears welling. "I always thought that when I had children, they'd become the grandparents I needed as a kid. Loving, but less rigid. Instead, they became even more extreme." "That's the thing about toxic patterns," James mused. "They either improve or worsen under stress. Having grandchildren triggered their need for control, not their capacity for unconditional love." As painful as his words were, they contained the truth I needed to hear. This wasn't a temporary rift that would heal with time and good intentions. This was a fundamental conflict of values that had endangered my child. Moving forward meant accepting that reality and building a different kind of family, one based on respect and love, not obligation and control. 6 months passed, and slowly we established a new normal. Without my parents' help, childcare became a complex puzzle of after-school programs, carefully vetted babysitters, and the occasional overnight shift trade with fellow nurses who had children. It wasn't easy, but we managed. Lily's health stabilized completely under her consistent medication regimen. Her nightmares became less frequent, and Dr. Winters reported good progress in therapy. She still asked about her grandparents occasionally, but the questions came with less frequency and anguish. One sunny Saturday morning, as we prepared pancakes together, Lily looked up thoughtfully while stirring batter. "Mom, why don't Grandma and Grandpa visit anymore? Is it because they're still mad at me for taking medicine?" I set down my coffee mug and knelt to her level. "No, sweetie, they're not mad at you at all. They love you very much." "Then why don't they come see me? Uncle James visits all the time now." I chose my words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups have very different ideas about important things like how to take care of children when they're sick. Grandma and Grandpa believe very strongly in their ideas, and I believe very strongly in mine. The judge decided that until we can agree on these important things, they shouldn't visit without another grown-up present. Like supervised visits, like when Jenny's dad sees her at the special center because he was mean to her mom. I nodded, impressed by her understanding. Similar to that, yes, but Grandma and Grandpa decided they didn't want visits that way. She considered this, her small face serious. So they could see me if they wanted to, but they'd have to follow the rules. Exactly. That's silly. I follow rules all the time, even when I don't like them. Out of the mouths of babes. I hugged her tightly, amazed by her simple wisdom. That evening, after Lily went to bed, I found an unexpected letter in my mailbox. It bore my mother's distinctive handwriting, but no return address. With trembling hands, I opened it, unsure whether to expect another religious tract or further accusations. Instead, I found something surprising, the first hint of reflection. Dear Denise, I've started and torn up this letter a dozen times. Pride makes it hard to write what needs to be said. The church has asked us to cut all contact with you as a demonstration of our faith, but I find I cannot fully comply with that instruction. I've been reading about Lily's condition from medical sources, not just Pastor James's materials. I didn't tell your father. What happened in the hospital frightens me when I allow myself to truly think about it. I still believe in God's healing power, but I'm struggling with questions I can't ask at church. I miss you both terribly. I'm not ready to accept all your conditions, but I wanted you to know that my heart is not as hardened as it might seem. Love, Mom. I sat with the letter for a long time, emotions swirling. This wasn't an apology or a real acknowledgement of harm, but it was a tiny crack in the certainty that had driven them to endanger Lily, at least from my mother. It was the first suggestion that she might be capable of change, however small and slow. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I brought the letter to my next session with my own therapist, Dr. Marshall, who had been helping me process my grief and anger. "This is potentially positive," she said after reading it, "but proceed cautiously. One ambivalent letter doesn't indicate real change." "What should I do?" I asked. "What do you want to do?" She countered gently. I considered the question seriously. I want Lily to have loving grandparents in her life, but only if they can respect boundaries and never again endanger her health. I'm not sure this letter indicates they're ready for that. Then perhaps a measured response is appropriate. Acknowledge the letter without making commitments. Keep the door cracked open without removing the necessary protections you've put in place. Following her advice, I sent a brief note with a recent school photo of Lily writing only, "Thank you for your letter. We miss you too." Lily is thriving in second grade and her health is stable. I hope your journey of reflection continues. Meanwhile, life continued to evolve in unexpected ways. My brother James found an apartment nearby and became a constant presence in our lives, the uncle Lily had barely known, becoming one of her favorite people. My support group introduced me to other parents navigating family estrangement, their stories helping me feel less alone. At work, I requested a transfer from the emergency department to outpatient pediatrics, reducing my overnight shifts and allowing more regular hours with Lily. The pay was slightly less, but the improvement in our quality of life was immeasurable. Amanda introduced me to her cousin Michael, a kind widower with a daughter Lily's age. We started with playdates for the girls and gradually progressed to coffee and then dinner without the children. It wasn't serious yet, but it was nice to have adult conversation that didn't revolve around medical emergencies or family drama. On Lily's 8th birthday, we hosted a small party at the local science museum. As children excitedly explored exhibits and devoured cake, I watched Lily from across the room laughing with her friends, healthy and happy. A profound sense of peace washed over me. My parents weren't there, but we were surrounded by love nonetheless. Amanda and her family James, several of my colleagues and their children Lily's friends, and their parents. I realized we had built something precious from the ruins of what was lost, a chosen family, bound by respect and genuine care rather than obligation. 2 weeks later, I received another letter, this one from my father. Unlike my mother's tentative reflection, his words remained rigid with righteousness. "We pray daily that you'll see the spiritual danger you're in before it's too late. Pastor James says stubbornness is a form of rebellion against God's authority." I showed both letters to Dr. Marshall at our next session. "This illustrates an important reality in family estrangement," she observed. "Family members don't always move through acceptance at the same pace, if at all. Your mother is showing signs of questioning while your father remains entrenched in his position." "So, what does that mean for us practically?" I asked. "It means you might eventually rebuild some kind of relationship with your mother, with appropriate boundaries. Your father may never be safe to have in Lily's life without significant change." It was a painful truth to accept, but also clarifying. I could maintain a small correspondence with my mother while still protecting Lily from harmful influences. I could hold space for potential change without compromising on safety. As Lily's birthday season faded into autumn, I reflected on the profound lessons of the past year. I had learned that true love protects rather than endangers. That family is defined by actions, not blood. That sometimes the healthiest choice for your child means setting painful boundaries with your own parents. Most importantly, I'd learned that we could build a beautiful life even after devastating betrayal. Lily was thriving in school, making friends, pursuing her interest in science with enthusiasm. Her health was stable, her nightmares infrequent, her understanding of her medical needs age-appropriate and matter-of-fact. One evening, as I tucked her into bed, Lily asked a question that caught me off guard. "Mom, are you sad that Grandma and Grandpa aren't here anymore?" I sat on the edge of her bed, considering how to answer honestly without burdening her. "Yes, sometimes I am sad. It's natural to miss people you love, even when they've made mistakes or hurt you." She nodded solemnly. "I miss them too sometimes. But I'm glad you keep me safe." Tears pricked my eyes as I smoothed her hair. "That's my job, sweetheart. The most important one I'll ever have." "You're really good at it," she said, yawning, "even when it's hard." As she drifted off to sleep, I reflected on her simple wisdom. Sometimes love means making the hardest choice of all. Choosing your child's well-being over your own parents' demands. It's a choice no one should have to make, but when faced with it, there's really no choice at all. The painful truth I'd come to accept was that sometimes the people who should love us most can become the greatest threat to our well-being. Sometimes those who raised us are the ones we must protect our own children from. And while that reality brings grief, accepting it brings freedom. The freedom to build something healthier for the next generation. I still hold space for the possibility that my parents might someday truly understand the harm they caused and make amends. The door remains cracked open, but with a robust security system in place. My first responsibility will always be to Lily, not to my parents' feelings or demands. In the meantime, we continue building our life on solid foundations of respect, evidence-based care, and genuine love, the kind that protects rather than endangers, that listens rather than imposes, that adapts rather than demands compliance. It's not the family story I imagined, but it's one I can be proud of. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice between different family members? What boundaries have you had to set to protect those you love, even when it broke your heart? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that. Sometimes, the bravest, most loving choice is to say no more to those who cannot respect boundaries. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that your family story is still being written, and you have the power to ensure it's written with love, respect, and truth.